Alone at the wedding, she discovered a hidden truth when the millionaire whispered, "Pretend we're together." Emma stood by the grand entrance of the vineyard, watching guests draped in luxurious fabrics gliding across the marble floors. The soft glow of chandeliers highlighted the radiance of the newlyweds, a fairy tale shepherded by wealth and privilege. Here she was, an anxious waitress in a simple black dress, standing at the precipice of a world that felt galaxies away. Each laugh echoed like a distant reminder of everything she hoped to escape. Yet couldn't. Timmy's dreams of football practiced in a nearby field played through her mind. She often thought of his small face lit up at night, painting it with wonder, even as reality loomed over them like a dark cloud, her mother's health declining and bills piling up. Each double shift felt like more than just a means to an end. It was the thread connecting her to the little family they shared, fortified with love and burdened by financial strain. Her hands trembled slightly as she refilled drinks, the clinking glasses echoing with laughter that felt like sharp needles poking at her heart. That was when she caught his eye. Alex Vanderbilt was the one everyone whispered about, the handsome heir of the empire that overshadowed Maplewood, leaving struggles in its wake. Emma had always viewed him from afar, charming, untouchable, one to dream of but never dare approach. But then, as if reading her thoughts, he strolled toward her, his silver suit glimmering under the lights while she felt like a wilted flower. "Pretend we're together," he murmured with a glint of mischief. Caught her off guard. "What?" she stammered, heart pounding as confusion washed over her. Before she could reply, he intertwined his arm with hers, drawing her into the throngs of laughter and clinking champagne glasses. Panic swirled in her chest, but something about his confidence ignited a flicker of curiosity. As they wove through the crowd, their contrasting worlds collided, everyone's eyes glued to the local girl grasped tightly by the handsome millionaire. "Isn't it nice?" he asked, his gaze slightly distant. She could see the weight of expectations shadowed in his eyes. Sometimes you just want to be free of everything. Her heart ached for him, realizing that behind the smiles lay stories of struggle, much like her own. Before she could delve deeper into their conversation and explore these emerging thoughts, a familiar voice echoed above the chatter. An argument had erupted. The air thickened with tension as locals faced off with the elite, bitter rivalries surfacing. Emma's instincts screamed at her to intervene, yet Alex held onto her arm, the dichotomy of their lives playing out in front of them. He was part of the problem, but here she was, the face of its repercussions. Uncertainty rolled through her. Could she really stand here, caught between loyalty to her town and a connection with the man whose privilege had stifled her dreams? Each passing moment felt like a crossroads. Would she hide behind the facade of wealth, or would she confront the truth and protect what she held dear? The clamoring conflict surrounded them, and as heart stirred like a tide, Emma's resolve began to sharpen. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Their eyes locked, and she felt the spark of a connection amidst the chaos. In that moment, a realization dawned. What if in his pursuit of freedom she could reclaim her own? She caught a glimpse of a life beyond the burdens, but would they forge a way together, defying the shadows of their families? As the night escalated into chaos, she braced herself for choices that could redefine everything. Would she find the courage to venture into this unknown, or shrink back into the constraints of what she had always known? Together. The hum of the party faded as Emma stared into Alex's deep blue eyes, a swirl of emotions colliding within her. With guests shouting about injustices and old wounds surfacing, she felt a strange comfort in his hold. "What do you mean by this?" she questioned, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would break the fragile moment. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "Just play along. I need a distraction and you look like you could use one too." His easy grin was infectious, yet underneath it lay a hint of desperation. Emma's mind raced. "You think pretending can help?" The argument flared up nearby, a clash between the local farmers and the Vanderbilt representatives, voices rising ever higher. The fear in her gut twisted painfully. Sometimes pretending is all we have, Alex replied, his expression growing serious. In this world it's easier to wear a mask. But the truth? That's messy. The clamor of the crowd morphed into a background hum, and despite her apprehension, Emma felt a strange pull toward him. Could this be a meaning beyond mere pretense? She had always worn the burden of reality heavy on her shoulders, had always been the anchor for her family. What if tonight she could just float? As they stepped further into the fray, laughter erupted around them, almost mocking. Attention shifted from their troubles to Alex's charming smile. Guests greeted them like royalty, and she became an unwitting participant in this grand masquerade, where she felt neither entirely lost nor wholly found. Hey, you're actually pulling this off. Alex chuckled, nudging her playfully. She smiled back, but in her heart doubts simmered. And what if people find out I'm just a waitress? Then let them, he said, eyebrows raised defiantly. You deserve to enjoy this moment just as much as anyone else here. Emma felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly snuffed by the disruptive argument nearby that was escalating rapidly. Voices rose, fists clenched, every word charged with emotion. She caught snippets of accusations, unfair treatment, and a betrayal that ran deep through the veins of their small town. People are hurting, Alex, she insisted, looking toward the drama unfolding. This isn't just a game to them. For a moment, Alex's countenance fell, revealing genuine concern beneath his suave exterior. I know, he replied quietly, the gravity of the situation dawning on him. But sometimes, change begins in unexpected places. The chaos swirled around them like a storm, and Emma's heart raced with every rising shout. She was torn. Should she stay wrapped in this charade, or expose herself to the anger that had long been festering in her community? The thought of stepping onto the battlefield stirred something fierce in her. In the midst of the argument, one voice rose above the rest, sharp and piercing. You think your money can protect you forever, Vanderbilt? Emma's grip on Alex tightened. This man was emblematic of everything she had resented. Yet here she was, nearly slipping into a world that had always felt out of reach. As the scene intensified, she caught a glimpse of Timmy's hopeful face in her mind, reminding her of her responsibilities. Maybe it's time we show them who we really are, she said, her voice steadying. Alex's eyes bore into hers, surprise gleaming. What do you suggest? No more pretending. If we're going to be at this party together, let us make it count. As the tension between the feuding guests reached a critical point, Emma stepped forward, determined to stake her claim not just as a waitress or a local girl, but as a member of this community. All bets were off now. Would courage lead her to confront both her past and the world of privilege she had walked into? Emma turned to Alex, heart pounding fiercely. Are you with me? As the first stone of progress was about to be thrown, a sudden silence washed over the crowd. Emma held her breath, realizing the momentum of her moment teetered between fear and hope. But of course, one question remained. Would they unite to confront their truths? Or would the long-standing divides only deepen? She could feel a storm brewing ahead, one that would change everything. Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. The silence was deafening, and she could sense 1,000 eyes flickering between her and Alex. The tension was palpable, as if the air itself was thickening with anticipation. Why don't we set aside our differences for tonight? She called out, her voice stronger than she felt. We're all here in one space, experiencing the same world, even if we wear different labels. A ripple of murmurs surged through the crowd. Some faces contorted with skepticism, while others softened with curiosity. She could see the farmers, roughened hands poised in disbelief, glaring at the polished Vanderbilt guests as if they were about to unleash their frustrations like the storm outside. I worked hard for what I have, one farmer yelled, his voice brimming with frustration, matching the fury in his eyes. And you think a party can make us forget that? It's not about forgetting, Emma shouted back, feeling a spark of something fierce inside her. It's about recognizing each other's pain. She turned to Alex, searching for that support she felt moments ago, and found him standing a bit taller, a hint of admiration sparkling in his eyes. He stepped beside her, a silent declaration of solidarity. There's truth in what she says, Alex added, his warm voice cutting through the tension. This town is built on our shared history. We're all neighbors struggling under the same sun. Yet we've allowed our fears to drive us apart. The crowd began to shift, the anger still simmering but mixed now with uncertainty. Emma felt the weight of her next words, and she knew she had to choose wisely. We face a storm every day, but we can find shelter together, she continued, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. Let us find common ground before we destroy what little we have left of this community. Let us open a dialogue, not a battlefield. Emma's challenge hung in the air. She could almost hear the heartbeat of the crowd, the collective breath they took as they processed her plea. This was her moment, the one she'd been longing for but never grasped tightly enough. Who is willing to put down their weapons? She asked, her voice akin to a lighthouse beacon, cutting through the fog of confusion and anger. Slowly, a few farmers began to step forward. First it was Tom, the oldest among them, who cautiously took a few steps towards Alex. You want a dialogue? Then let us talk about the ranchers who steal our water supply for their horse farms. He shouted, but the bite in his tone was softened by a flicker of hope in his eyes. Emma felt the tide turning. Yes, she replied excitedly. Let us talk about the real issues. There's no reason we can't share resources. We can find solutions. More people moved forward, hands gesturing animatedly, inching closer to each other, as if they had just realized they could step out of their silos of grievance. She could feel Alex's presence next to her, a steadying force. Somehow together they were unraveling the weight of resentment that had been pressed down for so long. But as the discussions began to brew with new thoughts, a sudden crash came from the other side of the venue. An elegant chandelier swung precariously, scattering a few glasses across the floor. Emma's heart dropped. A young woman, clearly drunk, laughed too loud, waving her arms dramatically. Look at this. You all think you can just play nice and fix everything? She shouted, her laughter cutting through the air like a knife. Emma felt despair creeping back in. Had they made any real progress at all? Or was it just another temporary fix? A fleeting moment of unity that wouldn't survive the morning? As she looked around at the hopeful faces amidst their challenges, she realized the conversation had just begun. Would they embrace this fragile unity? Or would they lean into the chaos? And if they chose the former, what could that mean for the future of their community? Amid the noise, Emma wondered deeply what was at stake if they succeeded, and what would they lose if they failed. Emma stood frozen, the drunken laughter echoing in her ears, slicing through the fragile thread of unity that had begun to weave itself among the crowd. That one jarring moment threatened to unravel everything they had just started to build. But she wouldn't let it. Not now. Hey! Emma shouted, her voice climbing above the ruckus. This isn't a game. We're just as tired of all this division as you are. The young woman's laughter faded slightly, her eyes narrowing on Emma. And what do you think you can change? You think holding hands will fix years of bad blood? Maybe it's a start. Emma responded, heart racing. But it takes all of us. It won't happen overnight, but we can't let the chaos drown out our voices. We owe it to ourselves to try. Around her, people shifted uncomfortably. Eyes darted accusingly between farmers and ranchers, uncertainty swirling in the air. But another farmer stepped up beside Tom, old but more hardened, and spoke up. You don't know what it's like to struggle, do you? Emma clenched her fists, feeling the familiar sting of anger and frustration bubbling up. I may not be a farmer, she admitted, feeling a swell of vulnerability. But I'm here trying to listen. Isn't that something? The crowd murmured, softening a bit as they watched the exchange unfold. Emma could sense Alex drawing closer, his presence like a shield against the rising tide of hostility. She caught his eye and felt a surge of camaraderie. Why don't we share our struggles? Alex suggested, his tone steady, lighting a spark within the crowd. We all have stories. Stories of loss, of hardship. It might help us to understand just how deep this divide really runs. Slowly but surely, a few voices began to share their tales, hesitant at first but gaining courage with each sentence. A young rancher talked about losing crops to drought, while a farmer discussed his family's generational fight for water rights. Each story brought forth new dimensions of their shared struggle and pain. Emma watched as the faces in the crowd began to change. Curiosity replaced anger. Surprised expressions morphed into contemplation. A tentative connection was forming, like threads weaving into a tapestry of community once again. But just as hope began to swell, A shrill whistle pierced through the air. All right. It was the young woman from earlier, now leaning on the bar, a manic spark in her eyes. Let me entertain this idea. Share your little pain stories. She taunted, smirking at Emma. Emma narrowed her gaze but took a breath. Yes, let us. Because sharing our pain can lead to healing. In that moment a silence fell. The crowd shifted, reconnecting with the weight of their reality. Emma felt fragile yet bold, standing at the precipice of something transformative. Then the unexpected happened. Tom stepped forward, his voice unexpectedly clear. My son lost his farm in the storm last season. It was everything he had worked for. Gasps echoed through the crowd, crashing against the tension like waves against rocks. Emma felt her heart lurch. It wasn't just business, it was lives affected, families torn apart. Don't you get it? A voice cried out from the back. We're all suffering, each in our own way. Looking around, Emma saw the raw emotion on their faces, a silent understanding beginning to form. Yes, they were different, but their struggles shared a common thread, a pathway toward an understanding that could mend their community. Just then the barmaid walked over with a tray of drinks, her presence breaking the heavy air. But as she approached, something glinted beneath the bar, a piece of paper that slipped from her pocket unnoticed, landing at Emma's feet. Curiosity sparked within her, the paper's edges worn but familiar. She knelt, picking it up and unfolding it with shaking hands, the crowd fading into the background as the reality of what she found hit her like a train. When she read the words scrawled on the page, confusion and fear surged through her. What she discovered sent a chill through her bones, igniting a new kind of storm inside her. Could this have been hidden all along? And what would it mean for everything they were working to mend? As she clutched the paper, a question loomed in her mind: was this truth a burden, or the key to setting them all free? Emma's fingers trembled as she held the paper, the words barely registering amidst the tumult of emotions swirling around her. The noise of laughter and clinking glasses faded into an echo, a distant memory. All she could focus on were the words inked on the page. A list of names, dates, and a single phrase tucked in the corner: the land will be ours. Her heart raced as she pieced together the implications. This wasn't just a slip of paper. It was a declaration of intent, a plan that might unravel everything they had slowly begun to stitch together that night. Emma! Alex's voice cut through her concentration, and she looked up, startled. He had moved closer, his brows knit in concern. What's wrong? This paper. She barely managed to whisper as she thrust it into his hands. It doesn't just talk about struggles. It hints at ownership, like they're planning something. His brow furrowed deeper as he scanned the document, while Emma's mind raced. Who had written this? Was it a threat or a promise? She felt charged with a sense of urgency, a pressure building in her chest. Suddenly, Tom stepped back into view, his gaze shifting from Emma to Alex, noticing the paper in his hand. What have you got there? He asked, a tightness creeping into his voice. Is it something alarming? Alex managed, glancing back at Emma for confirmation. Let me see. Tom reached out, but Emma instinctively pulled it back. No, wait. We need to think before we act. What do you mean? Tom's voice rose slightly. If there's a plan that threatens our community, we should go public. Expose it. Don't you see? Emma interjected. If we start pointing fingers now, we risk losing the fragile connection we've just begun to build. We have to approach this carefully. The tension thickened. Feelings of suspicion and fear etched across the faces around them as murmurs rose. The young woman from earlier, still leaning against the bar, caught on to the unease and smirked, her earlier bravado melting into something more menacing. Looks like the unity isn't as solid as you thought, she sneered. Emma felt her pulse quicken, feeling the heat of anger rise again. You don't know us. We're stronger than you think. Are you? She countered, eyes sparkling with glee. Or are you just one bad decision away from going back to square one? Her words hung in the air, and Emma could sense the looming chasm threatening to swallow them all. Alex stepped closer to Emma, his arm brushing against hers. We can't let her provoke us. This is exactly what she wants. Let us stay focused on what we started. Emma looked at him. His words reminded her of why she was standing there, why they had felt emboldened to share their truths. But then she turned her gaze back to the paper. Whatever it represented also demanded answers. Was it the very thing tying them together, or was it a snare meant to pull them apart? As the crowd began to settle, Tom's voice cut through the lingering unrest. So what do we do? Do we just ignore it? Not ignore it, Emma replied, her voice firm. We listen. We need to understand the full story before we react. The crowd was quiet, hesitant. Emma felt the weight of duty resting heavily on her shoulders. The path forward was perilous, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that each step mattered. Just then, a deep voice boomed from the back of the room, startling everyone. What if the paper tells us more than we think? What happens if it binds us or breaks us? Emma's heart sank. Who was that? Was it a friend or foe? As the crowd turned to look, the very air crackled with suspense, a whisper of truth dangling just out of reach. They were standing on the edge of revelation, but which way would they fall? It was with this weight of uncertainty that Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet, promising that the next move could redefine everything. The room was electric with tension, palpable enough to slice through the air like a knife. Emma's eyes darted around, searching for the source of the deep voice, wondering who could hold that kind of authority. When she spotted an older man standing at the edge of the gathering, a crowd of intrigued onlookers gathering around him, her heart quickened even more. Who are you? Emma called out, her voice rising above the murmur. The man stepped forward, his face partially obscured by shadow, but there was no mistaking the sharpness in his gaze as it locked onto hers. You can call me George, he said, his voice deep and slow like rolling thunder. And I believe that paper reveals more than you can understand. What do you mean? Alex asked, a hint of skepticism in his tone. It's not just a list of names, George continued, taking a step closer, his presence demanding attention. It's a record of alliances, debts, and aspirations. This community, your lives, they're interwoven, tangled in a web that you barely comprehend. Emma's mind reeled. She felt the weight of the names on the paper, familiar faces that filled their community's narrative, but the thought of them standing on such a precarious edge was terrifying. You're saying we're at risk of losing everything just because of this? Close to it, he replied and gestured around the room, the crowd now hanging on his words. One misstep by anyone can send shockwaves through everything you've built. The young woman from earlier, still lurking at the bar, smirked again. So what now? You really think these poor fools can unite against their own fears and failings? Don't kid yourself. Her eyes flicked between Emma and Tom, her voice dripping with scorn. Why hold on to fear? Emma shot back, the fire igniting within her once more. We've come too far to retreat now. We need to stand together. The crowd's murmurs shifted. Some stepped closer, nodding to Emma's words, while others still seemed uncertain. Unity has its price, young lady, George said, his brows knitted with concern. It's one thing to rally the group. It's another to face the consequences of what lies ahead. Things are about to get complex. Emma felt a nervous energy jerk at her insides. There was something in his tone, a note of warning that struck a chord deep within her. What do you know that we don't? Are we blind to something bigger? Taking a deep breath, George stepped back into the light, revealing creased lines that mapped years of experience across his face. You must unearth the truth behind those names. They're not innocent. They're bearing secrets that can tear this community apart. What secrets? Tom pressed, his voice steady despite the weight of the revelation hanging overhead. George hesitated, his eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for a ghost among them. There are deals made, betrayals waiting to be uncovered. If you want to protect what you've built, you must confront the unknown and also your own truths. The atmosphere thickened with Paul's words, each heartbeat pounding louder in Emma's ears. Could they uncover these hidden truths before it was too late? It felt like they were standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between hope and despair, and the sheer possibility of falling. Emma looked at Alex, who met her gaze with determination. We can find the answers. We just need to be brave. But the question lingered, would their brand of bravery be enough? Would it bind them closer together, or send them spiraling apart? As her heart raced, Emma knew they were just beginning to scratch the surface. They had to see past the surface of their connections and face whatever lay beneath. But the echoes of doubt resounded in her mind. Are we ready? She whispered, the weight of uncertainty threatening to smother her. Little did she know that secrets often held more danger than the unknown. And she would soon learn that the fight for their community was only just beginning. What they discovered could reshape everything they believed. Emma took a step forward, her heart racing. A sense of urgency pulsed through her veins. We need to start asking questions. Gather everyone who's named on that list. If George is right, we can't waste time. A meeting? Now. Alex looked skeptical, glancing back at the crowd. A mix of faces clouded with confusion and fear. We don't have a choice. Every minute we delay could cost us. Emma felt the fire in her belly flare up. It was empowering, yet terrifying all at once. George's voice rumbled again, cutting through the tension. You're wise to seek answers, Emma. But remember to tread carefully. Some truths once revealed may change how you see those around you. His words hung in the air, resonating with a weight Emma couldn't shake off. Could she face the anger or betrayal from those she thought she knew? Tom stepped in, determination etched on his face. Let us do it. If we're going to fight this, we do it together. And we need to draw strength from each other. Slowly, the crowd began to stir, whispers rippling through them like a nervous wave. George's presence lingered like a ghost, leaving an imprint of urgency and uncertainty. Emma glanced around. The young woman at the bar was still watching, a bemused look on her face. A real-life soap opera, huh? She called out, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You think this rallying cry is going to change anything? Emma caught her eye, a cocktail of anger and pain flooding her. It might surprise you what can happen when people decide to stand up for what they believe in. Good luck, the woman smirked, her tone mocking. A fire ignited in Emma, but she swallowed her response. Instead, she turned to the gathering crowd, willing herself to channel that anger into something productive. Let us meet at the community center in an hour. It's time to lay everything on the table. As the murmurs began to shift into hesitant nods and whispers of agreement, Emma's heart swelled with a flicker of hope. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could face the storm together. Hours later in the community center, the air was thick like fog. People shuffled in, exchanging cautious glances. There were lonely smiles and nervous fingers tapping on tables. Emma scanned the room, her heart beating wildly. She was flanked by friends Alex, Tom, and a few others committed to uncovering the truth. Let us start by talking about the names. Who knows who? Emma called, her voice steady but laced with urgency. One by one they began to share fragments of stories. Ties that had once seemed innocuous began to twist into shadows of suspicion. Secrets spilled like ink from a broken pen. Disappointment simmered in the room, faces growing tense. Suddenly, an older gentleman in the back raised his voice, shaking everyone from their whispers. I've seen the names. And I know more than it seems. His eyes darted nervously. But you need to understand some truths come with a price. The room fell silent, eyes blurred with uncertainty, each person weighing the gravity of their situation. Emma's throat tightened. What could be lurking in those names they thought they understood? Are we really ready for this? She whispered to herself, glancing at Alex, who nodded with grim resolve. A chill ran through her. They were standing at the cusp of something monumental, but would they lose themselves along the way? Before she could argue with her thoughts, the doors burst open. In walked George once more, a storm brewing in his eyes. I've got something important to share, but you may not like it. We need to talk about the past and who might be behind this game. Emma's heart sank. What had she involuntarily entangled herself in? She tucked her hair behind her ear and gazed at the unexpected turn of events, the weight of the moment heavier than ever. As she braced for the revelation, one thought screamed in her mind. This was only the beginning. George stepped into the community center with a gravitas that made the tension in the room crackle, like static electricity. Everyone's eyes were glued to him, waiting to unravel the mystery he was about to weave. Emma felt her heartbeat quicken, each pulse reverberating through her body like a war drum. She could sense the weight of the moment. Their collective hopes hung on George's next words. First, you need to understand this isn't just about names on a list. His voice was steady but carried an undertone of urgency. It's about a web of connections woven through our town, a family feud long buried beneath layers of secrecy. Tom leaned in, brows furrowed. What do you mean? Who's involved? George swallowed hard, drawing in a deep breath. The people on that list, each one is linked to something much larger. They're not merely residents. They're part of a legacy, a long-standing rivalry that could endanger all of us. The murmurs rose again, this time a blend of fear and intrigue. Emma turned to Alex, who met her gaze with anxiety swirling in his eyes. What legacy? What rivalry? She whispered, her voice barely rising above the noise. The Whitakers, George continued, his gaze shifting around the room, are a family that holds significant power in this town. You all know them, they're practically royalty here. And they've been in a silent war with the Greys, another family deeply ingrained in our community. The realization hung in the air, dense and palpable. Emma's stomach dropped as the pieces clicked into place. The tension between those families had been woven into the fabric of their lives, but now it was morphing into a potential threat as they gathered to confront their uncertainties. But what does this have to do with us? Tom pressed, his brows knitting together. Why should we care about old feuds? Because George said, his voice firm, those feuds are the foundation of the conflicts we're now facing. If we want answers, if we want any chance of protecting ourselves, we need to dig deep into these connections and understand the battle lines already drawn. The realization hit Emma like a cold wind. The past wasn't just behind them. It was breathing down their necks, threading through the present, ready to ensnare them if they weren't vigilant. Okay, Emma finally said, her voice quieter now but resolute. If we're going to unravel this, we need to bring everyone together, those who are listed, anyone who has history with the Whitakers and Greys. Silence enveloped them as eyes darted between one another, acknowledging the enormity of what Emma had proposed. Would those families even be willing to cooperate? Suddenly, the older gentleman from earlier stood again. It won't be that easy, he cautioned, his rigid posture betraying a deep-rooted fear. They won't take kindly to being confronted, least of all by strangers. Emma felt another wave of anxiety wash over her, but with it came a surge of determination. We have to try. If we don't act now, we risk being swept away in whatever storm is brewing. As everyone processed her words, George took a step closer. Sometimes it's the confrontation we fear the most that leads to the greatest revelations. But are you prepared for what you might find? His words hung thick in the air, stirring the crowd into quiet contemplation. Each person grappled with their own fears, their past threatening to resurface and potentially shatter the fragile hope they had sought to build. Emma stared at George, a flicker of determination igniting in her chest. Whatever it is, we need to face it together. Just then the doors slammed open again, this time with a force that shook the room. An unfamiliar man walked in, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd like a predator. I heard you're looking for answers. The unmistakable tension ramped up, as all eyes turned toward him. What secrets did he hold? Emma swallowed hard. Was the truth she craved slipping further from her grasp? Or was this the start of uncovering something far more dangerous than she had ever anticipated? Emma's heart raced as she locked eyes with the newcomer. The room felt electric, charged with a mix of confusion and fear. Who was he, and how did he know about their plans? Who are you? George stepped forward, his posture protective, as if shielding their fragile unity. The man smirked slightly, a glimmer of amusement dancing in his eyes. Name's Victor. I have something you want. He took a slow step forward, gauging their reactions, a predator savoring the moment before the hunt. What do you know about the list? Alex asked, his voice steady despite the tension. Victor leaned against the doorframe, a casual demeanor masking something much more serious. Everything. You see, those names you're worried about? They're not just random residents. They're pawns in a game, one that the Whitakers and Greys have been playing for generations. Emma felt a chill. The stakes were rising, and she sensed that Victor was much closer to the truth than they had anticipated. What do you mean by pawns? She pushed, not ready to accept some vague claim. Victor's expression cooled. This town has been marked by blood, betrayal, and a feud so deep it seeps into the very ground you walk on. Those families? They've made sacrifices, sealed fates. Whatever answers you seek, you'll need to navigate this tangled history to get to them. As he spoke, Emma could see flickers of tension in the faces around her. They were all grappling with a reality they had only begun to grasp. The Whitakers and Greys were not just names. They were shadows looming over their lives. And why should we believe you? Tom challenged, crossing his arms defensively. Because I'm not here to play nice, Victor replied, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I want the truth to surface just as much as you do. The difference is I know how to get it. You'll need my help, and I suspect you're going to need it sooner rather than later. Emma sensed the buzzing uncertainty in the group. Trust didn't come easy, especially not in matters of family intrigue. Despite their fears, she realized the offer loomed like a lighthouse, guiding them through the dark waters. Okay, so what's your plan? She asked, her confidence flickering like a candle in the wind. Victor straightened up, a glint of excitement in his eyes. First, you'll need to gather everyone on that list. The Whitakers and the Greys won't let their secrets spill so easily. You need leverage, a way to bring them together. But they despise each other. Someone shouted from the back of the room, the reality of their situation crashing down once again. Exactly, Victor replied with a wry smile. Which is why they'll be even more inclined to come to a meeting when they think they're being challenged. Fear can be a powerful motivator. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma could feel the push-pull of hope and despair battling within her. Could they really create a space for these families to face one another? How do we even start? She asked, desperation creeping into her voice. By throwing a public event, Victor declared, his confidence radiating. Weddings, family reunions, or town fairs, all perfect for drawing out hidden truths. Make it unavoidable, and they'll come, if only to protect their image. And trust me, people have a way of revealing more than they intend in gatherings like that. The room buzzed with uncertainty and excitement. It was a daring plan that could either end in disaster or unearth the truth they desperately needed. Emma met Alex's gaze, and they shared a moment of hope amid swirling fears. Fine, she declared. Let us do it. We'll bring them together and see what happens. As determination settled over the group, Victor's demeanor shifted subtly, and Emma sensed that he held even more hidden cards. But be prepared, he cautioned, eyeing each one of them. The truth can be a painful revelation. Once you start pulling at these threads, there's no telling how far it will go. Are you ready for that? Emma felt her breath hitch. Was she really prepared for the chaos that could follow? But there was no turning back now. Ready, she said, her voice steady, hiding the tremor inside. The air thick with anticipation. She realized they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Victor smiled, the low hum of tension still hanging in the room. Then the game begins. As he turned to leave, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was just beginning to brew, one that could either tear them apart or bind them together in ways they never imagined possible. What secrets lay beneath the surface? And how would they navigate the ensuing chaos? In the days following Victor's startling revelations, Emma felt as if they were trapped in a whirlwind. The community center buzzed with a mix of excitement and anxiety. It wasn't just about the names on the list anymore. It was about confronting demons buried deep within their town's history. Emma could feel the weight of her decision pressing on her shoulders. They gathered a coalition. A small band of people who believed in something greater, something beyond their everyday struggles. Alex stood beside her, his grip steadying as they rallied the townsfolk. This is more than just us now, he said one evening, eyes ablaze with determination. We're fighting for everyone. Emma nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her heart. She knew they were on the brink of something big. Finally, the day arrived for the community event Victor had suggested. It all converged in the town square, tables draped in bright cloth, lanterns swaying gently in the breeze, laughter and chatter buzzing like static electricity. Emma stood before the crowd, her heart racing. Today we unite. Let us face our past together and pave a way for our future. Her voice rang out, clear and strong. People nodded, tensions visibly easing as connections began to form. The unease that had lingered in the air stewed with palpable hope. By leaving the weight of the feud unspoken, they had gifted themselves an opportunity to mend what had long been broken. As the event progressed, she made her way through the crowd, talking to locals and farmers, feeling the energy shift. The Greys' tent stood next to the Whitakers, and Emma couldn't help but watch the animosity flicker like coals being stoked. But then, as if a dam was breaking, she felt a surge of resolve. "Hi, everyone," she called out above the murmur, catching the attention of Alex and the others. "This is our chance to talk. Your anger is valid. I've felt it too, but fighting each other will only leave us stranded." She gestured to Tom and the older gentleman whose son had lost his farm. "They've faced losses. We've all faced losses. Let us share those stories." Share what it means to try and live in harmony, even when the past haunts us. To her amazement, people began sharing their stories account after account of struggle. Disputes over water rights, families torn apart by diminished crops, neighbors growing weary under the shadows of old feuds. Emma saw the weight begin to shift, as if some unseen chain was being lifted from their hearts. Then the moment came. From the crowd emerged the farmer whose anger had previously filled the air, a man named Harold. His hands trembled, but his voice rang out with conviction. I don't want to walk in the shadow of old grudges anymore. My family's land means everything to us, but we can't keep fighting. It's tearing us apart even more. Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks as she felt the rise of collective emotion crackle in the electricity of the air. You're right. We can't keep letting these old fights dictate our paths, she said, feeling the power of their united voices. Suddenly, from the rear of the crowd, a figure approached. It was Victor. His presence commanded attention as he spoke. What you've done here today, this is just the beginning. The Whitakers and the Greys need to see this unity. But before Emma could digest the weight of his words, she felt a swirl of anxiety ripple through the crowd. A car pulled into the square, dust swirling in alarming plumes as it parked. Emma squinted against the sunlight to see who stepped out. It was the Whitaker patriarch, Malcolm, a figure who had loomed like a specter over their community. He cast a scrutinizing gaze around, dissecting the gathering. Emma, he called out, exuding a calm authority. I hear you've convened the town. What's this all about? Emma's heart raced. This was it, the confrontation she both anticipated and dreaded. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward. It's about healing and facing truths, Mr. Whitaker. It's time we stop letting grudges dictate our future. We're all in this together. The tension thickened in the air. As murmurs rippled through the crowd, Emma's heart pounded as Malcolm initially seemed unfazed, glancing at his family standing behind him, followed by the Greys who nervously eyed him in return. You think you can disband generations of animosity over a few shared stories? He questioned with a sneer, but there was uncertainty in his voice. We can try. Emma shot back, her voice gaining strength. We don't want to fight anymore. That isn't why we're here. Before he could retort, she saw the crowd behind her drawing closer. A wave of solidarity pushing against the walls that had long divided them. A silent strength built among them, bolstered by shared pain and understanding. Malcolm's expression faltered for just a moment, and Emma seized that window. We are ready to face the truth, to confront the past. Will you join us? Alex stepped beside her, echoing her sentiment. Together we could chart a new course. It's not about power. It's about community. One by one, townsfolk began stepping forward, voices buzzing in agreement. Tom, Harold, a few kids from the local schools each had a story that echoed loudly in the charged atmosphere. Malcolm surveyed the crowd, sensing a shift. If we're going to do this, let us do it right. We will talk, but there will be no trifling here. Emma knew they were on thin ice, yet the sense that they were moving toward reconciliation buoyed her spirit. No trifling. Just honesty, just healing, she replied, feeling warmth spread in every corner of her heart. As they began to converse, Emma felt herself truly standing amidst her community for the first time. The walls of division slowly crumbled around them as they shared their truths. This rain-soaked afternoon marked a turning point. Emma looked around. Maybe today wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a journey they would build together. No more shadows of the past. Just a community standing side by side. And almost as if in unison, they declared, together we will rise. Hope soared, echoing loudly through the square. In that light, it became clear to Emma transformation appeared real and possible. They were bound together by their newfound understanding. There would be challenges, yes, but they had taken the crucial first step toward a brighter future. Emma realized. It was the people that formed the heart of a community, and together, they could weather any storm. But even as they stood united, she understood one thing. The real journey was just beginning. And with this unity, Emma felt more steadfast than ever, ready to face whatever came next. You need to subscribe now to join us for more exclusive stories that inspire. Leave a like now to spread the joy and feed the algorithm. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Your support is everything to us as we embark on new journeys together.